My name is Azra Valen. Tonight was my 36th birthday party. I invited 40 people to our big house in Buckhead. The house is huge and fancy with marble floors, tall windows, and chandeliers that shine like tiny stars. We had crystal glasses for drinks, live jazz music playing softly, and everything looked so pretty and perfect. Everyone was laughing, talking, and having a good time. Then, halfway through dessert, something happened that nobody could forget. My dad stood up suddenly. He was holding his wine glass, and it wobbled in his hand. He spoke loud enough so that everyone in the room could hear. "You're not even half the woman your 16-year-old sister is," he said. My mom smirked like she thought it was funny and added, "Seriously, Azra, be grateful we still let you live here." Serenity, my little sister, sat on the fancy velvet sofa with her legs crossed. She showed off her new Rolex watch and laughed. "Exactly. Some of us actually deserve the lifestyle," she said, like she was proud of herself for being the favorite. The room went completely quiet. 40 pairs of eyes were staring at me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just pushed my chair back slowly, enough so the legs scraped against the marble floor. Then I smiled. I said, "Then let her start paying your salary," looking straight at my father. "Because, Dad, you're fired. Effective tonight." His wine glass froze halfway to his lips. My mom's mouth dropped open in surprise. Serenity blinked like she had just been slapped. You could have heard a champagne cork drop on the floor. If your family has ever treated you like you don't matter, just because someone younger or shinier came along, then you know how that feels. I wanted to show everyone that I wasn't weak. I had a plan, and I was ready. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? I remember when I was 18, Dad called me into his study. He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was a letter that said I had won a full-ride scholarship to Emory University. I had worked for 2 years to earn that scholarship. I had studied late at night, done every assignment, and prayed I would get it. But Dad didn't even look at me. He said, "We're keeping this money. Your mother and I might have another child someday, and that one will need it more." I stared at the paper until the words started to blur. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just nodded and walked out. I applied for every student loan I could find. I had to make my own way because my parents refused to help me. 4 years later, I graduated at the very top of my real estate finance class. I came home with a business plan. I asked my parents to co-sign so that Valen Realty Group could be incorporated under my name. Mom laughed first. Dad smirked like he had heard a joke. "Sweetheart," he said, "this is a legacy business. Daughters don't run legacies. When we have a son, or at least someone worthy, we'll talk." They refused to put my name on anything that belonged to me. So I took a train to Atlanta with 2 suitcases and $23,000 in debt. I rented a tiny studio apartment, the size of a closet, and started my company anyway. I cold-called brokers, talked to property owners, and signed my first lease before my 24th birthday. I never asked my parents for help again. 10 years later, Valen Realty Group was managing over 230 commercial properties across the Southeast. The total market value was over $180 million. The board begged me to become chairman, but Dad still sat on every investor call, wearing the chairman title like it was his by birth. On paper, I was CEO, but every major decision still needed his signature. He loved reminding everyone that the company carried his last name, not mine. I smiled quietly in meetings, signed where I was told, and slowly moved every new asset into holding companies he didn't know existed. I kept my moves secret, like a chess player setting up a checkmate that nobody could see coming. Then, 14 months ago, I did something nobody expected. I walked into Dad's office on a random Tuesday. I had a bottle of his favorite Macallan whiskey and a thick contract folder with me. "Dad," I said, "you've been talking about retiring for years. Let's make it official." I offered him the title of Chairman Emeritus. I offered him $750,000 a year, full medical benefits, the corner office with a view of the skyline, everything a man stepping back could want. Mom clapped like I had finally come to my senses. Dad flipped to the last page, saw the salary line, signed it without reading the rest, and shook my hand. He looked like he had won a prize. That night, I raised my glass with them. I felt absolutely nothing. I signed that contract for one reason only. Soren Callias, my corporate attorney, has been with me since the very first lease I signed in that tiny studio apartment. He knows every company, every shell, every line I've ever drawn to protect what I built. Late one Thursday night, my phone buzzed. Soren's name flashed on the screen. Azura, he said the second I picked up, his voice low. Your father just emailed me from his company address. He wants me to draft a new irrevocable trust. Everything, operating agreements, real estate holdings, cash reserves, will go to Serenity when she turns 18. Your name isn't mentioned once, not even as a backup beneficiary. I sat up in bed, switched on the lamp, and opened my laptop. Soren had already forwarded me the email. Dad's signature block still read, Theron Vallon, Chairman Emeritus, Vallon Realty Group. But the instructions were clear. Lock me out completely and make the transfer look like estate planning. Do it fast. I read the email 3 times. I didn't feel anger or sadness. I felt a cold, clear determination. Does he know you're my counsel first? I asked Soren. He thinks loyalty is still for sale, he answered. I said, tell him yes. Tell him you'll start immediately. Bill every minute to the company, because from now on, every cent he spends is on my tab. Soren paused. You're sure? He asked. Absolutely. From this second forward, you work for me and only me. Double your retainer if you need to. I want a mirror plan. Something he'll never see coming. He exhaled slowly. Understood, he said. I poured a glass of water and opened a new encrypted folder on my desktop called Endgame. That night I didn't sleep. I mapped every asset, every entity, every signature authority still in Dad's name. By sunrise, I had a list of 47 moves that needed to happen in perfect silence. The next morning, I called an emergency board session, no parents allowed, and voted myself sole managing member of the parent LLC. The resolution passed unanimously. Dad had missed the last 4 meetings anyway. Next, I created the Azura Vallon Irrevocable Trust in Delaware. Soren and 2 independent trustees he trusted were appointed, and I began quietly transferring ownership of every new lease and every refinancing into the trust's name. Old assets stayed where they were, at least for now. I needed the illusion to remain intact. I kept corporate credit cards active. I left Dad's name on the country club membership and season tickets. I even approved Mom's request for a new Range Rover for errands. Every swipe, every wire, every signature went straight into a shadow ledger Soren built for me. Serenity kept posting from private jets and 5-star resorts, thinking they were birthday surprises. I watched the charges hit the corporate Amex card and simply forwarded them to a forensic accountant I had hired 6 weeks earlier. He flagged each one as personal expenses disguised as client entertainment. The total climbed past $4 million faster than I expected. I scheduled quarterly strategy retreats in Miami and Napa, flew the executive team first class, and made sure Dad heard how generous I had become. He ate it up, called me, and finally acted like family in front of the staff. I smiled, refilled his glass, and signed another approval for Serenity's new condo deposit in Buckhead. Soren sent Dad drafts of the fake trust every 10 days, each version more ironclad than the last. Dad replied with enthusiastic notes. Perfect. Add a spendthrift clause for Serenity. We don't want her blowing it too fast. Every email went into the same encrypted folder. By the 8th month, the real trust owned 92% of the operating entities. Dad still believed he controlled everything because the signage hadn't changed, and the checks still carried his name. He had no idea the checks were now drawn on accounts I alone could freeze. I filed the first IRS whistleblower submission anonymously through Soren's firm, attaching 2 years of flagged transactions and corporate card statements. The reward if they collected it would be substantial. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the liens, the power. From that day forward, I started moving the pieces exactly where I wanted them. The Azura Vallon Irrevocable Trust was born quietly in a Wilmington law office on a Tuesday. 3 independent trustees signed. Soren filed the paperwork before lunch. From that day forward, every new lease, every refinance, every acquisition flowed straight into the trust. Old entities stayed untouched on the surface. The stationery, the signage, the bank portals all still showed Vallon Realty Group exactly as Dad liked it. Underneath, ownership had already begun its silent migration. I kept every corporate card active and every account threshold high. Dad used the black MX the way he always had, never questioning why the statement stopped coming to his inbox. Mom requested wire transfers for household expenses like she had for 20 years. I approved them instantly, then mirrored every transaction into the forensic ledger. The internal audit ran on a server no one else could access. Each week, a new report landed in my inbox. By the end of the 4th month, The number sat at $2,800,000 moved for Serenity alone. Private high school tuition in Switzerland counted as employee training. A $2 million condo in Midtown was listed as marketing internship housing. First-class deposits for a 3-week summer tour across Europe were coded as client site visits. Every line item carried Dad's digital approval or Mom's handwritten note. I printed nothing. I forwarded nothing. I simply let the total climb. Soren scheduled quarterly trust reviews in person, always at my penthouse after 9 at night. We sat at the kitchen island with 2 laptops and a bottle of water between us. He showed me the new percentages. Each meeting ended the same way. One more batch of operating agreements re-registered under the trust, one more layer of distance between what my parents thought they controlled and what actually belonged to me. Dad planned a big family dinner to celebrate our family and show off. He started telling our cousins all about a huge money plan he was finishing in Europe. He was bragging and smiling at everyone, making them think he was really clever and important. I smiled too, sitting across the table. I said something nice about the wine, just like he wanted to hear. But I had a secret plan of my own. Later that night, while everyone was sleeping, I quietly worked on my own plan. I moved 11 more houses and properties into my trust. A trust is like a special box where you put money and houses and other things so only certain people can use them. I made sure the trust had all the things Dad was showing off at dinner. By the time 6 months passed, the total money and properties in my trust were over $4.2 million. That was a lot of money, more than most people could ever imagine. One day, Soren, my helper, came into my office holding a small USB stick. He looked serious. "This is enough proof," he said quietly. "Proof that Dad is using company money in ways he shouldn't." I took the USB stick and plugged it into a special laptop that is never connected to the internet. That way, no one could hack it or see what I was doing. I used it to make a report to the IRS. The IRS is the part of the government that checks if people pay their taxes and don't steal money. I didn't put my name or address on the report. I just sent 47 pages of bank papers, credit card statements, and meeting notes showing exactly who did what. 9 days later, the IRS sent me a note saying they had received my report and would start an investigation. That meant they were officially checking everything. I closed the email and went back to planning my birthday party. I wanted my birthday to be perfect. I booked the same ballroom that Dad used for his 60th birthday. I hired the same food caterer, the same musicians, a string quartet that played soft jazz. I wrote the invitations myself on very fancy paper. I wanted to celebrate my 36th birthday, but also show everyone the next chapter of my company, Valen Realty Group. Dad called me to say he was touched. He sounded proud. Mom asked if she could bring a new Rolex watch as a gift for my sister Serenity, and I said yes. Soren had already installed a projector in the ceiling, disguised as a chandelier. It was going to help me show everyone the truth in a very dramatic way. 3 days before the party, our housekeeper, Marceline Orlia, got her own invitation. She was asked to sit near the front. She looked at me and nodded once. I knew she already understood what was going to happen. Every seat at the ballroom was assigned, every slide on the projector was ready, and every document was triple-checked. I chose my 36th birthday to show everyone the truth. The ballroom looked beautiful. There were golden lights shining on the walls, white flowers everywhere, and the string quartet was playing soft jazz music. 40 guests were dressed in black tie and walked around, laughing and talking about old memories and new babies in the family. Dad had already had 3 bourbon drinks and was on his 4th. Mom floated around the room in a shiny champagne-colored dress with diamond earrings that sparkled every time she turned her head. Serenity stood in the middle of her friends, holding up her phone to show pictures. She was showing off condos and airplane tickets she got for being smart in school. People laughed politely. Someone raised a toast for the next generation. Dad put his arm around Serenity and said loudly, "That's right. Some kids get the world just by existing. Others," he looked at me, his face red with pride, and raised his glass. "Others just take up space." Mom added loudly, "Be grateful we still give you a roof over your head, Azura. Most kids your age would kill for this life." Serenity flipped her hair and said, "Exactly. Some of us don't need to beg for scraps." Everyone's eyes turned to me. Phones went down. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Mrs. Marceline, sitting in front, looked at me and nodded quietly. I knew she was ready. I set my champagne flute on the nearest table. The sound of the glass clinking echoed across the room. I walked to the center of the ballroom, silent on the marble floor, and smiled the smile I had practiced for weeks. Then I said loud enough for the microphones hidden in the flowers to catch. Then let her start paying your salary. Dad's glass slipped from his hand. Bourbon spilled on his shoes. Mom opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Serenity laughed nervously, waiting for a joke. I raised one finger. That was the signal. The lights dimmed without warning. The musicians stopped playing mid-note. A low mechanical hum came from the ceiling as the chandelier rose up on invisible wires, revealing the hidden projector lens. Soren stepped out from behind the dessert table in a sharp charcoal suit. He held the remote in his hand. He pressed a button. The big screen lit up. Slide 1 appeared. Valen Realty Group Employee Termination Notice. It said that Dad was fired immediately. Gasps went through the room. Phones came up to record. Dad stared at the screen, mouth moving silently. Mom grabbed his arm. What is this? Azura, turn it off, she cried. Slide 2 appeared. It showed Dad's own employment agreement signed 14 months ago. The agreement clearly said employees could be fired anytime, without notice. Slide 3 showed that the board of directors had removed Dad from all voting rights in the company. Slide 4 was an organization chart. My name was at the top. Dad's name was crossed out in red. Serenity shrieked. This is a joke, right? Turn it off. Slide 5 appeared. It showed Dad's employment contract again, with paragraph 17 circled in red. It clearly said Dad could be terminated at any time and would not receive any extra money. Dad lunged forward. This is insane, he shouted. Slide 6 appeared. It was a spreadsheet with 38 rows of money Dad had used from the company for personal things. $180,400 for family educational support. $2,100,000 for plane tickets for Serenity. $412,000 for trips in Europe. Everyone in the room whispered to each other. Phones lifted to take pictures. Dad's face was drained of color. Mom gripped the table so tightly her knuckles were white. Slide 7 appeared. It showed a letter from the IRS proving that an investigation had been opened for possible criminal tax fraud. Someone in the back accidentally dropped a glass. It shattered on the floor. Soren didn't stop. Slide 8 appeared. It showed a legal document called a trust. I was the only trustee. It had all the company's money, properties, and assets in it. Dad roared. You can't do this. That company has my name. Slide 9 appeared. It showed that the company name had been legally changed 2 days ago to Easy Realty Holdings LLC, removing all references to Valen. Mom finally said, You ungrateful, but stopped when she realized it was too late. Slide 10 showed letters from banks closing all company accounts in Dad's and Mom's names. Slide 11 showed photos from Instagram of Serenity on yachts, shopping trips, and vacations, with numbers showing exactly which corporate charges paid for them. The room murmured. One cousin, who I hadn't spoken to in years, shook his head and mouthed, Damn. Dad tried to run to the stage, but the 2 off-duty Atlanta police officers I had hired blocked him without saying a word. He froze, breathing hard like a bull. Mom collapsed into a chair, holding her chest. Serenity cried hysterically. I picked up the microphone that the musicians had been using. Thank you all for coming, I said. Dessert is still being served. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. But no one moved. The room was frozen. Finally, Dad found his voice. You'll never get away with this, he shouted. I looked him straight in the eye. I already have, I said calmly. Security escorted them out the side door. Mom's heels scraped loudly across the marble floor. Serenity's crying echoed down the hallway. Dad never looked back. 3 weeks later, the IRS froze all accounts that were still under the old Valen name. Dad's country club membership was canceled. Mom's spa charges were declined. The black luxury cars they had were blocked and couldn't be used anymore. 2 months later, the IRS sent a formal notice. Dad and Mom owed $11.4 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. Their mansion went up for auction. The starting bid was $8 million. People watched and bid slowly. In the end, it barely sold for $9 million. Even though it was a birthday party, it had become the night everything changed. I had taken control of the company, the properties, and the trust. Dad's name could no longer stop me from running the company I worked so hard to grow. Mrs. Marceline, the housekeeper who had worked with the family for 23 years, had been quietly sitting in the front. She looked at Dad one last time and said softly, God sees everything, Senor Theron. You cannot hide from the truth. Dad's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mom tried to speak, but wobbled and sat back down hard. Serenity ran toward me, fists clenched, but an officer gently held her arm. She started crying against his chest. I took the microphone again. "Thank you all for coming. Dessert is ready. Enjoy the rest of your evening." But the room stayed quiet. Phones were still recording. People whispered to each other. Some guests looked shocked. Others shook their heads. Everyone knew this was not a joke. From that night on, I was in charge. Soren handled all communications with Dad and Mom. I was the trustee of the trust, owner of the company, and had the right to make all decisions. No one could stop me. It was my birthday gift to myself: control, freedom, and justice for all the work I had done. It was a new chapter, and no one could take it away. A man who works with a lot of money in Miami bought our house, without even looking at it first. Moving trucks arrived on a rainy Thursday. Dad stood on the front steps wearing the same old bathrobe he had worn for 20 years, watching strangers pack up all of his golf trophies. He didn't say anything. He just watched as boxes filled with all the things he had spent years collecting left the house. They rented a small 2-bedroom apartment in Sandy Springs. It wasn't fancy at all. The carpet was beige, and there was no person at the front desk to help. Mom cried the very first night, because the dishwasher was very loud. Dad stopped shaving. It was like he just gave up on trying to keep up with anything. Serenity lost her spot at the Westminster School the very same day that the tuition money didn't go through. The headmaster sent a polite letter saying she had to leave immediately because the payment didn't happen. She had no choice. She started at North Atlanta High, a public school 20 minutes away from our apartment. On her very first day, someone recognized her from a video that had gone viral on TikTok. It had 14 million views by then. Kids pointed at her and whispered, "That's the girl whose sister showed the whole family." They recorded her walking down the hallway. Then they made the video slower, added silly clown music, and played it over and over again. The video stayed pinned on the school's anonymous account for weeks. Every time she walked by, people pointed and whispered. She tried to hide, but everyone seemed to know. Dad tried the country club one last time, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they would still let him in. The manager met him at the entrance. He was polite but very firm. "Membership has ended, sir. Payment didn't go through." Dad drove home in the old Lexus, the one that used to be the spare car. It felt smaller now, like it didn't belong to him anymore. Mom sold her jewelry to a gray market dealer near Peachtree Street. She came home with $43,000 in cash and looked at least 10 years older. She had lost the shine in her eyes. They used the money to hire a tax lawyer, but he left after seeing all the problems in one meeting. "No defense," he said. "Plea or trial? Trial will lose." Serenity's phone blew up with messages from people she used to call friends. None of them were kind. Some said mean things, some laughed at her, some just ignored her cries. She stopped posting on social media. Then she stopped leaving the apartment at all. My own phone rang constantly. Blocked numbers called. Voicemails piled up that I never played. Texts from Mom said, "We're still your parents," and from Dad said, "You've made your point. Let's talk." From Serenity. I got 67 messages in one single day. They went from begging to threatening to crying. I didn't read any of them twice. I deleted all the threads without replying. Soren sent me settlement demands, schedules, and foreclosure notices. I didn't sign anything that helped them. I signed everything that finished the job. My company, Easy Really Holdings, had its best quarter ever. People who once liked Dad and followed him around now wanted to work with me. I expanded the company into Charlotte and Nashville before Labor Day. Dad got a part-time job helping with a strip mall in Roswell. He made $40 an hour. He told the owner not to use his full name on the website because he didn't want anyone to know it was him. Mom started volunteering at a church thrift store because the quiet apartment was worse than the loud apartment we had left behind. Serenity cut her hair short, dyed it dark, and started taking the bus to school. She told her new guidance counselor that her last name was Smith. She wanted to disappear and start over. One Sunday morning, Dad showed up at my office building downtown. Security called me immediately. I watched him on the lobby camera. He looked thinner than before, unshaven, holding a manila envelope like it was a white flag. I told security that I was in Tokyo, so he would leave. He didn't try to go inside. He left the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It said, "I was wrong. I'm sorry." There was no signature. I put it in the shredder without looking again. I didn't want to see it. I had already moved to the 48th floor of a glass tower in Midtown. The elevator opens directly into my penthouse now. No doorman. No neighbors asking questions. Just floor-to-ceiling glass, and the entire Atlanta skyline spread out like it was made for me alone. Easy Realty Holdings ended the year with $412 million in assets. We own half the new tall buildings on Peachtree Street, part of the Beltline projects, and every big office lease from here to Charleston. The board meets in a room with my name on the door, made in brushed steel. There is no family name attached. When new partners ask about the old brand, my team just says, "That chapter is over." No one asks more questions. They can Google it if they want. I kept the people who stayed when the cameras were rolling that night. Mrs. Marcelina Gear now runs my house and sits on the charitable foundation board. Soren became a partner last quarter. His name is already on the letterhead. The analysts who used to flinch when Dad walked in now send me birthday cards without any sarcasm. I date when I feel like it. I sleep 8 hours when I feel like it. I fly private because the company owns the jet, not because someone else signed the papers. Some nights, I scroll past an old family photo that survived everything. For people on a yacht in 2010, all smiling like nothing could ever go wrong. I look at the girl I was then, with longer hair and eyes full of hope. I don't recognize her anymore. I don't hate her. She did what she had to do to become me. I don't feel regret. Guilt never calls. The space they might have filled is now something quieter. Certainty. I have learned that blood is just biology. Family is the small group of people who choose to stand by you when the fire is real. Mine is small, deliberate, and unbreakable. Tonight, I'm on the balcony barefoot. The city lights flicker 48 floors below. A cold November wind cuts across the terrace, sharp and clean. I pour 2 fingers of whatever is open in a glass. I raise the glass to no one and speak the only truth that still matters. Family isn't the place where you are born. Family is the place that refuses to let you go. When everything you built is ash and everyone else has walked away. I drink. The skyline drinks with me. Silent, bright mine. I look at the city below. Cars crawl like little glowing ants on the streets. People hurry, lights blink, and the wind whispers. I imagine the apartment where Mom volunteers, the strip mall where Dad works, and Serenity on the bus, hiding under her dark hair. They are alive. They are safe. They are finding their way. And I am here too, high above the world with glass walls all around, and the whole city stretched out like it was built for me alone. Sometimes I remember the sound of the dishwasher that made Mom cry the first night, the beige carpet in the small apartment, the rain falling on the moving trucks. I remember every little thing. It doesn't hurt anymore. It only reminds me how far I have come. I take another sip of my drink and watch as the sky darkens. The buildings glow with tiny lights like stars fallen to earth. I can feel the cold wind on my bare feet, smell the November air, and hear the quiet hum of the city. This is my life now. The life I built. The life I chose. And in this quiet, high above the streets, I understand. Family isn't about names or blood or past mistakes. Family is about the people who stay, the people who fight through the fire with you, the people who never let you go. My family is small, but it is mine. And that is everything. I smile. The wind blows. I raise my glass one last time. The city sparkles. Silent, bright mine.